Amazon is removing a major Echo privacy feature. Pokemon Go is selling your location data to Saudi Arabia. Brazil is forcing iPhone sideloading and more. It is a busy week. Welcome to Surveillance Report 217, where we are dedicated to keeping you private and secure with the latest news from said week. I am Nathan from The New Oil.
I am Henry from Techlore.
And our sponsor this week is EasyOptOuts. This is a data removal service. Many of you may or may not be aware that if you have been a digital citizen for pretty much any amount of time, your data is probably online. These people search websites, go out, and they scrape your data from everything, social media, public records, pretty much anything they can get their hands on. And the unfortunate thing is, here in America, they just publish it on the web for anyone to see for free. EasyOptOuts is one of those data removal services. There are a handful that we believe are effective, but there's a few things we like about EasyOptOuts that make them stand out. One is they are affordable. It's only $20 a year. Cancellation is easy. If you're not satisfied, they will refund you. And we have studies from both Consumer Reports and privacy guides that have shown they are effective. They ask for minimal information. You don't have to give them any information that isn't already publicly available. They're just trying to confirm that they've got the right records so they can request a takedown. There are only 2 employees, so they're not sharing your data with a lot of third-party contractors. There are no ads or analytics on the platform, so again, they're not sharing your data with those companies. They do not submit requests unless they found your record. So they're not just spamming your data to a bunch of companies that might not even have it. And they are constantly adding new sites over time, and they have business plans. So if you want to manually take down your data, of course, we do encourage that. That is a great way to do things, but it's also really time consuming. And so EasyOptOuts is a great, trustworthy service that is one way to go ahead and at very least get the low hanging fruit, and then you can go and check after them, or just kind of help yourself out and stay on top of this stuff. Because unfortunately, that's the privacy landscape right now, is we have to really look out for ourselves and be proactive. So thank you to EasyOptOuts for sponsoring us. Thank you for everything you do in the privacy space. We're so happy to have them around. And if you are still on the market for a good data removal service, or you want some help with that, definitely check them out. That'll take us into the highlight story. And this week, we're going to talk about Amazon. The headline says, everything you say to your Echo will be sent to Amazon starting on March 28th. This is a brand new story, actually. I think it just came across my feed a couple hours ago. And this comes from Ars Technica. It says, in an email sent to customers today, Amazon said that Echo users will no longer be able to set their devices to process Alexa requests locally, and therefore avoid sending voice recordings to Amazon's cloud. Quick note, I have to wonder how many people even knew that was a thing. I mean, granted, I don't have an Alexa or an Echo. I don't have any Amazon stuff, but I didn't know that was a thing.
I didn't know that was a thing. Yeah, that's news to me.
I actually have a couple loved ones who have Alexas and Echoes, and I totally would have been like, dude, you should turn this on. If you're going to use it, at least do this. But now, no point. Anyways, the article goes on to say Amazon apparently sent the email to users with do not send voice recordings enabled on their Echo. So they're kind of keeping this relatively on the down low, only sending it to people who already enabled it. This will begin on March 28th, and recordings of everything spoken to the Alexa living in the Echo speakers and smart displays will automatically be sent to Amazon and processed in the cloud. So the article mostly goes on to list all of Amazon's privacy failings, or at least a significant number of them. And I'm okay with that. So I think I'm going to go ahead and quote the article here. Amazon has previously mismanaged Alexa voice recordings. In 2023, they agreed to pay $25 million in civil penalties over the revelation that it stored recordings of children's interactions with Alexa forever. Adults also didn't feel properly informed of Amazon's inclination toward keeping Alexa recordings unless prompted not to until 2019, 5 years after the first Echo came out. Actually, I want to go back to that children thing and say what I always say in these situations: encryption is what's putting the children at risk. We need to ban Signal. It's not Amazon, it's the encryption. Okay, sarcasm aside. The article says, if that's not enough to deter you from sharing voice recordings with Amazon, note that the company allowed employees to listen to Alexa voice recordings. In 2019, Bloomberg reported that Amazon employees listened to as many as 1,000 samples during their 9-hour shifts. Those are long shifts. I hope that includes a paid lunch. Haha, this is Amazon. It doesn't. Amazon says that it allowed employees to listen to recordings to train its speech recognition and natural language understanding systems. Other reasons why people may be hesitant to trust Amazon with personal samples include the previous usage of Alexa recordings in criminal trials, and Amazon paying a settlement in 2023 in relation to allegations that it allowed, quote, thousands of employees and contractors to watch video recordings of customers' private spaces, unquote, taken from Ring cameras. And that comes from the Federal Trade Commission. Amazon said in its email today that by default, it will delete recordings of users' Alexa requests after processing. However, anyone with their Echo device set to don't save recordings will see their already purchased device's Voice ID feature bricked. Quick note on that. It mentioned earlier in the article, Voice ID is a more advanced Alexa feature that allows it to recognize specific voices. So I'm assuming here, the article didn't elaborate, but say, for example, you have kids in the house and you don't want them to be able to access certain features, or when it asks Echo a question, you want to make sure it returns safe for work results, for example, things like that. Or again, to hopefully not store children's data until the heat death of the universe. The article continues by saying Amazon is forcing Echo users to make a couple of tough decisions. One, you could grant Amazon access to recordings of everything you say to Alexa or stop using an Echo. Two, you could let Amazon save voice recordings and have employees listen to them, or lose a feature set to become more advanced and central to the next generation of Alexa. So basically, they're putting you in a crappy situation either way. Either you can consent to this or just lose your Echo or lose critical features, which we focus on the privacy and security stuff, but that goes hand in hand with a lot of other things like censorship and data sovereignty. And this is a data sovereignty thing. Like, you don't really own the device. They're not giving you meaningful consent. So that's really unfortunate. I've said this before. One thing I've noticed about the privacy community is that everybody has their, I call them their pet company. Like, everybody has that one company that they're like, this is the worst one. Like, sure, Google sucks, Apple sucks, whatever. But like, this company stands head and shoulders above the rest as the worst. And for some of you, that is Google and Apple. For me, it's an even tie with Facebook and Amazon. They're constantly like, one will do something crappy and like take the lead, and then the other one will do something somehow worse and pull ahead. My opinion of Amazon can't possibly go any lower than it already is. I say that now. Don't worry, the headlines are coming next week. But this is unfortunately not surprising to me. I'm surprised they had any sort of privacy feature at all. So the less practical advice I would give people is to find some sort of alternative, which I don't think there are. We talked about, I'm pretty sure Mycroft is shutting down. I don't even know if Mycroft was any good. I never used it personally. There's just not a lot of really good options for voice assistants out there because they're kind of coming into conflict with a lot of issues that have been raised about AI, consent and training data and having access to a lot of powerful data centers and devices for training good AI. So just by nature of those restrictions, we're not really going to have a lot of good options for privacy respecting stuff. But I think we will still see some better options as time goes on. Like, I know for everybody who hates Apple, you're going to hate this, but I think Apple is probably the least crappy big tech option right now. So maybe like an Apple, what do they call it? HomeKit, Home Assistant, something like that. So best option would be some sort of like offline, privacy focused, but it's probably not going to work as well as the mainstream stuff. Second best would be Apple. And then I think third best would be if you have an Amazon device, you're going to have to decide, like, maybe you don't care about that voice ID feature. Maybe just go through the settings and see, are there any other privacy settings that you can do to kind of mitigate things? I think those are kind of the three best options. Or of course, number 4 is just chuck the thing in the recycling and stop using it. But I'm assuming if you bought one, you want one. Again, it's really unfortunate, but this is Amazon. And unfortunately, I'm not surprised personally.
My most hated company's definitely Facebook, but Amazon's not far off for me. Typically, I'm not an all or nothing kind of guy. If a phone does something that isn't great, that I don't support, that I think could jeopardize someone's privacy and security, I'll say, okay, yes, like this sucks. We need to address it, but you don't have to throw the whole phone in the garbage can because this still provides you a lot of other value. And there's also tons of middle grounds. You can actually mitigate the concern and it won't impact the rest of the usability. Amazon has kind of forced you into a corner with this, where I don't think there's a reasonable way to use this device with any real layer of privacy to actually use the device. Like, the whole point of the device is you use your voice to engage with it. That's the only thing you can do with it. And yeah, I mean, the voice ID feature might have additional issues, but even if you keep voice ID disabled, I just don't really know what the middle ground is to make it better for you. I know you can set up like NextDNS on your router and block some of the telemetry that Amazon does, but I actually don't think telemetry is the biggest issue here, which is, I think, speaks to how there are a lot of concerns outside of just telemetry with this kind of stuff. And I think in this, it's just the raw data. You have no ability to keep this voice data in any way private if you're using an Echo. I'm not an all or nothing kind of guy, but I think if you think that privacy is important and privacy is a human right, I just don't know how you can own this device in your home. There's no way to use it with any layer of privacy. And I'm not really all or nothing, but I'm trying to find the opposite argument and I can't find one. So I might be missing something, or it might just be one of those rare situations where there is no winning here with this device. So might be better to sell it and maybe find an alternative that at least has some kind of opt-out option or slightly better privacy, as Nate was saying. Or just forgoing this altogether and using assistants on your phone instead, which also have their own issues, but at least it's not through Amazon. It's my turn to go into the data breaches. We're going to keep this quick. There was a data breach at a Japanese telecom giant called NTT. which hits 18,000, not people, companies. So these corporate customers had their information compromised during an incident, which included customer names, customer representative names, contact numbers, phone numbers, email addresses, physical addresses, service usage information, and most likely other sensitive information. So they say that the contracts for corporate smartphones and mobile phones provided directly by NTT were not affected by this incident.
Tata Technologies data leaked by ransomware gang. So this is a company from India. I think this is one of those like mega corporations, if I understand correctly. Tata provides product engineering and research and development services to automotive, aerospace equipment makers, and engineering companies across 27 countries. The company has 20 delivery centers and over 12,500 employees. The leaked data published on the gang's dark website, the ransomware gang, who claims that they stole this stuff, includes personal details about current and former employees, as well as confidential information, including purchase orders and the company's contracts with customers in both India and the US. The ransomware gang says the dataset includes over 730,000 documents, including Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoint presentations, and PDF files, cumulatively totaling about 1.4 terabytes in size.
We're going to go into company news now, and we're going to talk about DuckDuckGo, who's offering free access to popular AI chatbots at duck.ai and expands AI-assisted answers on its search engine. We're going to try to keep this as brief as possible because there's a ton of details, so I'm going to just repeat that we always leave sources in a description. Check them out if you want, if you're like more of an AI nerd and you want to get all the deets. I'm going to speak about this as if you're not all AI nerds and you just want kind of like the broad scoop. This doesn't require an account. The URL is duck.ai. Models are periodically updated, and they're currently featuring GPT-4.0 Mini or 4.0 Mini, O3 Mini from OpenAI, Meta Llama 3.3, Mistral Small 3, Cloud 3 Haiku, and chats are anonymized via proxying and not used for AI model training. Additionally, they're also making some improvements to Duck Assist, which appear in the search results page for relevant queries. They detail how they proxy and how they remove the IP address completely, and they use their own IP address for the proxy, so they try to do this as privately as they can, and it's only stored locally on your device in terms of recent chats. So they don't store like your chat history on DuckDuckGo servers at all. It's only stored locally on your device.
Meta considered sharing user data with China, according to a whistleblower. This complaint was registered by someone who worked on a team handling China policy and alleges that the social media giant so desperately wanted to enter the lucrative China market that it was willing to allow the ruling party to oversee all social media content appearing in the country and quash dissenting opinions. I really feel like that's kind of the gist of this article. Basically, Meta wanted to get into China so badly that they made all kinds of promises to China about, we will censor anything you want, we'll set up like a point of contact in the country who can dictate things, we'll have like a moderation team specifically for that. That's really what the article harps on. As far as sharing user data, it comes down to this paragraph right here. According to a memo in the complaint, Meta leaders faced aggressive pressure by Chinese government officials to host Chinese users' data in local data centers, which would have made it easier for the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, for those who don't know, to covertly obtain the personal information of its citizens. They actually did this, according to this article. Days after meeting with Meta's China negotiating team, the privacy team was willing to weaken Hong Kong users' rights, according to an email exchange contained in the complaint. In exchange for the ability to establish operations in China, Facebook will agree to grant the Chinese government access to Chinese user data, including Hong Kongese users' data, one privacy staffer wrote. So how did that go for them? By 2019, Meta had abandoned its China ambitions just as the Trump administration was waging a fierce battle against China over trade. Now Meta aims to benefit from Washington's aggressive stance on China. Zuckerberg told employees during a company-wide meeting this year that its business would be helped if China-based TikTok ends up being banned in the United States.
Saudi Arabia is buying Pokemon Go and also your location data from Pokemon Go. Niantic is selling Pokemon Go, Pikmin Bloom, and Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter now is being sold to Scopely, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of a Saudi Arabian company called Savvy Games, which itself is owned by the Saudi Arabian government's public investment fund. Scopely, Niantic, and Savvy Games have collectively published 6 separate blog posts about the almost $4 billion deal, none of which specifically address what's happening with location data of the 100 million players who play Pokemon Go, and none of which address how location data collected in the future will be handled. They said that a knock-on effect of this massive deal is that it will be spinning off its AI mapping business, which was using Pokemon Go data to create a large geospatial model into a separate company. Notably, the new investor suggests an ongoing relationship between these companies and an interest from Scopely in the use of Pokemon Go user data to create AI mapping. There is no world in which Scopely does not collect players' locations moving forward, but what remains unclear is what is going to happen with location data moving forward and what is going to happen with historic location data. That's a quote from the article.
Next up, Allstate. Allstate Insurance is sued for delivering personal info on a platter in plain text to anyone who went looking for it. So New York State is suing Allstate Insurance for operating websites so badly designed that they would deliver personal information in plain text to anyone that went looking for it. The data was lifted from Allstate's National General Business Unit, which ran a website for consumers who wanted to get a quote for a policy. That task required users to input a name and address, and once that info was entered, the site searched a LexisNexis Risk Solutions database for data on anyone who lived at the address provided. The results of that search would then appear on a screen that included the driver's license number for the given name and address, plus the names of any other drivers identified as potentially living at that consumer's address, and the entire driver's license number of those other drivers. This is the article. Naturally, miscreants use the system to mine for people's personal information for fraud. I believe it went on to talk about how people would use this for scams and phishing and things like that. When asked about the lawsuit, an Allstate spokesperson basically said that they fixed the issue, quote unquote, years ago as soon as they were alerted to it. But by the time the insurer resolved the mess, crooks had already built bots that harvested at least 12,000 driver's license numbers from the site. And after discovering this breach, the company failed to notify the more than 9,000 New Yorkers whose data was compromised in violation of state laws. And then they point out that National General made a similar mistake once on a quote generating tool it provided to its agents, and that one allowed criminals to swipe details on another 187,000 people.
And then over to Pinterest, they are changing their user terms so that they can train AI on user data and photos regardless of when they were posted. So this is a new clause published this week on the company's website, which outlines they can use patrons' information to train, develop, and improve their technology like machine learning models regardless of when pins were posted. So you could have posted something since 2010, and it's still subject to being fed into an AI model. In the update, Pinterest claims its goal in training AI is to improve the products and services of their family of companies and offer new features. They have promoted tools like a feature that lets users search by body type. According to their most recent earnings report, it boosted ad spending on the platform. The company is also building text-to-image foundational AI model dubbed Pinterest Canvas, which is designed for enhancing existing images and products on the platform. They also stress that there's an opt-out button, so it's all okay for the AI training, and says it doesn't train its models on data from minor users. Soon after, they reached out to Pinterest with questions about the update, and they were contacted by a spokesperson who insisted that the update wasn't newsworthy because the update simply codifies things that Pinterest was already doing.
And we'll end the company section on some good news. End-to-end encrypted RCS messaging on iPhone coming in future software update. This came from 9to5Mac, so it's a little bit skewed in a pro Apple direction, but the information is still pretty solid. The article says, in collaboration with the GSM Association, Apple today announced that it will add support for end-to-end encryption for RCS messages. This brings RCS much closer to iMessage in terms of security standards. The new RCS Universal Profile 3.0, including end-to-end encryption, was only just released today at the time of this article, which I think was yesterday, maybe today. So it's not clear exactly when the support will ship to customers. Apple said it helped lead a cross-industry effort to bring end-to-end encryption to the RCS Universal Profile. For those of you who have no idea what RCS is, RCS includes features like typing indicators, emoji reactions, read receipts, and support for higher resolution photo and video attachments. However, until today, the Universal Profile standard did not support end-to-end encryption for messages sent over the protocol. But now that the capability has been incorporated into the standard, Apple has committed to integrating it.
We're going to go into the research, and we're going to start with Google, who has researchers that released a kit to exploit microcode vulnerabilities in Ryzen Zen 1 to Zen 4 chips. It's one of those things that makes sense in the headline, but when you read out Ryzen Zen 1 through Zen 4 chips. They say Ryzen Zen 1 to Zen 4 chips, and it sounds like I'm saying 2 is the number, but it's TO. This exploit affects all AMD CPUs within the Zen 1 to Zen 4 architectures. I'm going to say through, because that's just confusing. AMD released a BIOS patch plugin to exploit shortly after the discovery, but any of the above CPUs with a BIOS patch before 2024, 12.17 will be vulnerable to the exploit. Though a malicious actor wishing to abuse this needs an extremely high level of access to a system to exploit it, those concerned should update their or their organization's system to the most recent BIOS update. There's more technical stuff about how they exploit it. They say that luckily microcode updates do not persist through reboots, so the experiments are largely harmless. So
A new tool called Chirp uses audio tones to transfer data between devices. So this is an open source tool that transmits data like text messages between computers and smartphones through different audio tones. The tool maps each character into a specific sound frequency and plays it along with real-time visualization. Other microphone-equipped computers running Chirp may capture the sound and translate the message back into text. The project allows users to sneak messages between devices in a fun way, and it's available both online and as a standalone app for free through GitHub. Although it's not overly practical for most real-world applications due to background noise interference, it could still prove helpful in short-range, offline, and low-power use cases. One practical limitation is that it stops listening for messages when transmitting, so anything received during that time is essentially lost. When considering that a message consists of 100 words, takes roughly 70 seconds to transmit, this can be a problem in some cases. The developer also told Bleeping Computer that Chirp currently has no error correction or redundancy, so the error rate could get impractically high if the background noise is too loud or the speaker isn't high enough. The next step that they're working on is to experiment with hypersonic sounds to allow message exchanges using inaudible frequencies. This will make Chirp even more stealthy and more fun to play with. For those wanting to play with the online application and are worried about privacy, the developer told Bleeping Computer that the application is hosted on GitHub pages and all functions happen on the client side and are never sent to a server.
Politics. We're going to start with Brazil, who's ordered Apple to allow iOS sideloading within 90 days. The Federal Regional Court of the First Region has overturned a trial ruling and reinstated an injunction imposed by the Administrative Council for Economic Defense on Apple. And this is about a dominant position in the app distribution market for iOS devices, pretty much requiring them to allow sideloading within 90 days. There's a lot of back and forth. Apple tries to claim there's no rush for this, they don't need to do this, and according to the federal judge, they need to get a move on. This update here does not hinder Apple's business model, but only imposes adjustments that can be reversed if the final decision in the administrative process is favorable to the aggrieved party. So Apple has already complied with similar obligations in other countries without demonstrating significant impact or irreparable harm to its economic model.
I'll take both of the next two because they're both pretty short and they both concern CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Administration. So first up, Trump has nominated Sean Planky as the new director. The article says Planky has several years of experience working for U.S. government. In 2013, he gave cybersecurity support to U.S. forces deployed in Afghanistan. Then he worked at U.S. Cyber Command, then the U.S. Coast Guard and the U.S. Navy. Or maybe that was all three at once, U.S. Cyber Command, the U.S. Coast Guard, and the U.S. Navy. He also worked in the previous Trump administration as Director for Cyber Policy on the White House's National Security Council, and later at the Department of Energy, according to his LinkedIn. And then the next one says, Doge acts as CISA red team staffers amid ongoing federal cuts. Musk's Department of Government Efficiency has fired more than 100 employees working for the U.S. cybersecurity agency CISA, which includes red team staffers. And for those who don't know, red team is the people who work for the company or the government or whatever. They're on the good guy's side, and their job is to basically try to find the weaknesses. So they're supposed to pretend like they are malicious hackers and find the weaknesses, and then they report them to the company so the company can get them fixed. So a CISA spokesperson told TechCrunch that CISA's red team, quote, remains operational, but that the agency is, quote, reviewing all contracts to ensure they align with the priorities of the new administration. Another person affected by the layoffs told TechCrunch that laid off employees also include staffers who worked for the Cyber Incident Response Team, or CERT, which is responsible for pen testing and vulnerability management of networks belonging to U.S. federal government departments and agencies. The person said that in total, more than 80 employees supporting continuous monitoring had been laid off, as well as between 30 and 50 employees working in incident response.
This is a story called the 200 plus sites an ICE surveillance contractor is monitoring. So a contractor for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, and many other U.S. government agencies have developed a tool that lets analysts more easily pull a target individual's publicly available data from a wide array of sites, social networks, apps, and services across the web all at once, including Blue Sky, OnlyFans, various meta platforms, and more, according to a leaked list of the sites obtained by 404 Media. In all the list names, more than 200 sites that the contractor, called Shadow Dragon, pulls data from and makes available to its government clients, allowing them to map out a person's activity, movements, and relationships. So marketing material available online says they can plot identities and find connections between them, create a map of suspicious activity and follow a suspect's trail, and follow the breadcrumbs of your target's digital life and find hidden correlations in your research. In one promotional video, they say users can enter an email, an alias, a name, a phone number, a variety of different things, and immediately have information on the target. They can see interests, they can see who friends are, pictures, videos, and more. The leaked list of targeted sites and services include ones from major tech companies like Apple, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, and TikTok. It includes communication tools like Discord and WhatsApp, activity or hobby-focused projects like All Trails, Book Crossing, Chess.com, and cigar review sites, Cigar Dojo. I mean, there's just so many. I can't even list these all. ICE specifically has worked with Shadow Dragon as recently as February 24th. When asked if the activity constitutes scraping and provided with the list of sites, the VP of Business Operations at Shadow Dragon told 404 in an email that Shadow Dragon doesn't log customer inquiries or the resulting data, so we can't provide information that violates the privacy settings of individual account owners using these platforms, including data they've deleted. In other words, the searches are performed live on sites when the Shadow Dragon user requests it. That might arguably still violate some of the company's terms of use. So in a podcast, also, Shadow Dragon, their CEO made comments about protesters. He added that protesters are probably not moving the needle at all. He said that my word of advice for anybody that's feeling invited into the rage mob of the day is, hey man, get off social media, go buy a lake house, get a beach house, do something. Get in debt and get off social media. Don't get invited into all this rage.
And then we're going to end with a couple pieces of good news. First up, France rejects the controversial encryption backdoor provision. I do believe we covered this either last week or maybe the week before. We covered a blog post from Tuda that talked about France had this law called the narco trafficking or something like that. Anyways, they wanted to introduce an encryption backdoor and basically say that everybody has to have a backdoor because we got to stop the drug dealers and all the bad people. And thankfully, the pushback was so strong that members of parliament rejected the program. This would have been Article 8, which is currently passing through the country's National Assembly and would have required all encrypted messaging apps and secure email services to decrypt user data upon an authority's request. The decision to preserve the people's privacy and security is certainly a victory for the tech industry, yet, according to Tuda, quote, we must keep fighting for privacy and keep raising our voices as long as there are still politicians trying to break encryption.
Honda has settled with the CPPA over privacy violations. This is in California, as it's regarding the CPPA. To resolve the allegations, Honda agreed to implement a new and simpler process for Californians to assert privacy rights. The company is required to certify its compliance, train its employees, and consult a UX designer to evaluate its methods for submitting privacy requests. Honda must also change its contracting process to ensure appropriate mechanisms are in place to protect personal information. In addition, Honda will pay a $632,000 fine.
With that, we will move into the free and open source software section, and we're going to start with some depressing news. Strongbox has been acquired by Applause. For those of you who don't know, Strongbox is an iOS and I believe macOS KeyPass client. So if you're like a KeyPass user, you'd prefer not to use Bitwarden or ProtonPass like password managers. KeyPass is an offline option, and KeyPass is actually the protocol. So there's a bunch of different clients. There's like Strongbox. Android has something, KeyPass DX or something like that. KeyPass XC is a really popular one. That's the one I use. But yeah, Strongbox was one for Apple products. Applause is a team of indie developers who have been building iOS and macOS apps since 2010. While we may operate under the radar, you might know us through Nomorobo, our spam call blocking app, or Voice Dream Reader, our text-to-speech app. We'll talk more about that in a moment. They go on to say, we want to reiterate several things that will not change in this transition because we know what's the most important thing for you. Your data stays yours. Your passwords will remain where you stored them, protected by your encryption keys. No migration or conversion is needed. KeyPass compatibility stays. We know this is essential, especially for our German users. Local storage and self-hosted sync options will also stay. So WebDAV, SFTP, iCloud, and offline use will remain fully supported, and the developer Mark will continue to support us in an advisory capacity, ensuring a seamless transition across the board. Near-term goals, performance and reliability improvements, full support for the latest OS updates in Apple Silicon, fixing sync and autofill bugs, better documentation and expanded language support, especially German. Long-term goals, the next 6 to 18 months, improve biometric and hardware security key support, better offline sync and conflict resolution, advanced password health insights, process locally on your device, and improve field management and templates. On the surface, when I read this, I thought, okay, this doesn't sound terrible. However, there is a Reddit thread, which we will link in the show notes. Users are not happy about this. This is a company who has a history of acquiring apps and then inshifying them. Most notably, I mentioned Voice Dream Reader. That is a really popular app, apparently, with people who are blind or what do they call it? Like difficulty seeing. And recently moved to a subscription model. It used to be fully open, I think open source, but don't quote me on that. I'm gathering this from context from having read all the comments on Reddit. It was an open app, it was free, it was all that fun stuff. And then a couple years after Applause acquired it, it is now subscription based.
Super quick story, Privacy Safe, actually run by one of our friends, Sean O'Brien, is releasing something called Privacy Safe Locker, and it's a privacy first temporary storage solution for securely sharing encrypted files and memos. Privacy Safe Locker ensures that all encryption happens on your device, so it's zero knowledge, and the server cannot read or access the content. It's a 24-hour self-destruct, and it's only a 25 megabyte file limit, so it's not designed for like video sharing or anything like that. And we always have to remind people to not abuse this stuff, and this is why we can't have nice things. I want to remind everyone that Firefox / Mozilla used to have a beautiful thing called the Firefox Send, where you could just go online, open your web browser, and it let you upload up to a gigabyte just completely for free without an account and send the link to someone, and they can download the file, and it was super fast speeds. And they had to remove it, likely for reasons that didn't have to do with their publicly stated reasons, is my guess. They said it was malware. I feel like it was malware and likely some other very not good stuff that people were doing.
And that'll take us into Misfits. And the first one is just kind of a quick signal boost. U.S. cities warn of wave of unpaid parking phishing text. So cities are warning of an ongoing mobile phishing campaign pretending to be text from the city's parking violation departments about unpaid parking invoices that, if unpaid, will result in an additional $35 fine per day. While parking scams have been around for years, a massive wave of phishing text messages has caused numerous cities throughout the U.S. to issue warnings, such as Annapolis, Boston, Greenwich, Denver, Detroit, Houston, Milwaukee, Salt Lake City, Charlotte, San Diego, San Francisco, and many others. So then they have an example of one of these texts. It says, "This is a final reminder from the city of New York regarding unpaid parking invoice. A $35 daily overdue fee will be charged if payment is not made today," reads the phishing text. And this is from the article. "Over the past year, Apple introduced a security feature that disables links and text messages from unknown senders and suspicious domains." Sorry, some context. So basically, they're using Google domains as a forwarding to the actual domain. So when it shows up in your inbox, it's google.com. And then when you click on it, it takes you to, fakeparkingnewyork.com. Obviously, it looks a little bit more legit than that, but it's not google.com. So that's why they say this. As google.com is a trusted domain, Apple iMessage does not disable the link. So using the company's open redirect makes it easier to trick unsuspecting users into clicking the link by mistake. The balance owed varies per campaign, with one received by Believing Computers stating that we owe $4.60. It says there is a telltale sign that this is a scam, as the dollar sign is displayed after the amount rather than before, as is customary in the US. This further indicates that the scam was created by people outside of the US. And then clicking the Proceed Now button brings you to the screen where the threat actors attempt to steal your data, including your name, address, phone number, email address, and eventually your credit card information.
NIST kind of set standards for things like in the security space, and they have finalized guidelines for evaluating differential privacy guarantees to de-identify data. Differential privacy, or DP, is a privacy-enhancing tech that's used in data analytics, and in recent years it's been successfully deployed by large tech companies and the US Census Bureau. While it's a relatively mature technology, a lack of standards can create challenges for its effective use and adoption. So they have pretty much put those together. It was originally released in draft form in December of 2023, and based in part on comments received, the authors updated the guidelines with the goal of making them clearer and easier to use. So differential privacy works by adding random noise to data in a way that obscures the identity of the individuals but keeps the database useful overall as a source of statistical information. But noise applied in the wrong way can jeopardize privacy or render the data less useful. So to help users avoid these pitfalls, the document includes interactive tools, flowcharts, and many other things so that people can do this properly. On a similar note, NIST has selected HQC as the 5th algorithm for post-quantum encryption, so they're choosing the best algorithms for this. They published the encryption standard last year based on quantum-resistant algorithm called MLKEM, and this new one called HQC will serve as a backup defense in case quantum computers are someday able to crack MLKEM. So both these algorithms are designed to protect stored information as well as data that travels across public networks, and HQC is not intended to take the place of MLKEM, which will remain the recommended choice for general encryption.
Last one is similarly a signal boost to the first one. Thousands of TP-Link routers have been infected by a botnet to spread malware. So this campaign is exploiting a high-severity security flaw in unpatched TP-Link routers and has already been spread to more than 6,000 devices. According to a new report from the Cato CTRL team, the Ballista botnet exploits a remote code execution vulnerability that directly impacts the TP-Link Archer AX21 router. Of the thousands of infected devices, the majority of them are concentrated in Brazil, Poland, and the United Kingdom, Bulgaria, and Turkey, with the botnet targeting manufacturing, medical, or healthcare services and technology organizations in the United States, Australia, China, and Mexico. You can see details about the firmware downloaded on the TP-Link page, which provides full details on how to upgrade, including an FAQ and a setup video. Those were all our stories for the week. Amazon is removing a major Echo privacy feature. Pokemon Go is selling your location data to Saudi Arabia. Brazil is forcing iPhone sideloading, and much more. It was quite a busy week.
Again, the sponsor this week is EasyOptOuts. We're huge fans of them. We both use EasyOptOuts ourselves. For me, it's mainly because it's been proven by both Consumer Reports and privacy guides, and through my own testing, it is more effective than the previous service I was using, and it's far cheaper for only $20 a year. Cancellation is easy, though I don't plan to, and they also do refunds if you're not satisfied, which I also don't plan to. But if you have any issues with them or you don't like it for whatever reason, they still make that really easy to do. They ask for minimal information, so you really don't have to give them anything that isn't, something you want to share. Just give them exactly what you need to give them to get the job done. Nate already mentioned there's only 2 guys. We've had some phone calls with them to get to know them, and they are super down to earth, and they kind of gave us some insight into how they do things. And it seems like they really take this stuff really seriously in terms of keeping things private and secure. It's refreshing coming from some of these other organizations that many of their founders actually have ties to the data broker industry themselves. It's probably the best platform, hands down, that I've come across at this point. They also have business plans, so if you have a business or you have a team and you want to give some benefits to them, that is something else to explore, but ultimately it's just a super good one-stop shop to make this super easy. Previously, I always still recommended using automated services to save yourself time and use that time towards other things that are important for your privacy, but the cost was always kind of the main thing that was the bottleneck for people. But for $20 a year for the amount of convenience this gives you, it's a really solid option. So highly recommend checking them out. In the description, really grateful for that partnership.
And that's all we had this week. So thank you again for listening to the Surveillance Report. Links to all the stories can be found in the show notes. And if you have a story you think we should cover, please send it to news@surveillancereport.tech. The final thing we want to ask, share the podcast around. Make sure you are subscribed. Give us a rating if you're listening on a platform where that's an option. We're trying to reach as many people as possible with the message of privacy, and you can help us do that. Friendly reminder to that end, we do have the Surveillance Clips channel where we will be sharing some of the other stories, non-headline, but still big stories that you can send to your friends and family. So thank you again for listening, and we'll be back next week.